everyone, it's Nicole and welcome back to my channel. My neighbors hate me because it's midnight and it's the middle of the week, but I felt like filming a very casual video and everyone is doing their mid-year reading check-ins right now, so I was like, I simply must do this too. I'm not prepared at all. Everything that you're going to hear today is going to be off the cuff. This actually is going to determine the truth, how much I hated and loved these books actually, and how much I remember of them. And we're going to start with the first question, which is best book you've read so far in 2021. I will try to answer without looking at my Goodreads. That's gonna be the real challenge. Of course, it's The Summer Suns by 𝕊𝕌ℙ𝙁, which I believe I've read in 2022. Summer Suns by 𝕊𝕌ℙ𝙁. Such a discovery for me this year. I absolutely loved it. I love suspenseful, queer, dark fiction. And that was everything that I like in one book. The story is about a guy named Andrew who's best friend and a guy that he had a crush on for ages but repressed it, Eddie, tragically died. The police believes that Eddie killed himself, but Andrew doesn't believe it because he thinks that he knows Eddie like no one else, and he doesn't think that he could have done it. So he decides to investigate himself. He moves to Eddie's house and meets his new friends that he made while scouting a university because they both wanted to get a degree from it. And through this process, he figures out a lot of things about Eddie and himself that he was not willing to admit before. It's an incredible novel because at the core of it is this complicated, at times toxic friendship between these two guys. And it is wrapped in this supernatural, deeply suspenseful Southern lore. Not only they struggle with the desire for each other and internalized homophobia, but also with the scary power that allows them to see dead people that they were gifted with when they got into an accident as children. If you like gothic fiction, specifically Southern gothic fiction, if you enjoy dark academia themes, if you want to read something incredibly beautiful but also incredibly angsty, I highly recommend this book. It's just so good. I cannot believe that this is a debut. I believe it is a debut. I think this is the only non-romance 5-star that I have this year. No, I'm lying. I gave a 5-star to a sequel, and I know that there is a question in this tag about sequels, so we're going to leave it to that question. I've read a lot of 5-star romances this year so far. I've simply been blessed with them, and I hope to read many more this year. The first book was The Perks of Loving a Wallflower, which is now one of my favorite FF historical romances. The romance is cute. The use of tropes is excellent. It's so swoony, and technically it's a sequel, but I have not read the first book and I'm not planning to, so you know, it's the first book for me. I love the two heroines so much. One of them is a blue stocking and she plans to remain so. She doesn't really want to get married, but her parents want to sell her off, basically, because her father wants to get a bit more influence in the society. While their family is very rich, they don't have a title. And the second heroine is a cross-dressing marvel. She can pretend to be anyone, no matter the class, age, or gender. And she's a part of a Winchester family that has a bit of a reputation in the society. Their older sister married a duke, I want to say, so they now are invited, but they were actually adopted by a baron and people don't like them very much. They become an item when Tom Winchester decides to imitate the new baron, who doesn't exist. He was just a made-up person that the old baron left the money and the estate to. So it was kind of an extreme measure. During the promenade, Tommy sees Philippa, and Tommy had a long-standing crush on Philippa. So she decides to approach her in a disguise, and they have an instant connection. Philippa, for once, thinks that maybe she found a guy that she actually likes and she can appease her parents, but Tommy quickly tells her that she's actually Tommy. What happens next? Of course, they come up with a plan where Baron is going to court Philippa, so Philippa would attract other gentlemen and her parents would get off her back for a little bit. In the process of pretend courtship, they fall deeply in love with each other. This book is everything. It is a delight. It's beautiful. I highly recommend it. Another favorite from this year is How to Bang a Billionaire by Alexis Hall. I have another Alexis Hall book in this video. It's just the author that I'm reading a lot this year. I'm going to read more of his books. How to Bang a Billionaire is an amazing response to the 50 Shades of Grey phenomenon. It's a story about these two guys. One of them is an Oxford English Lit student. The other one is, of course, the billionaire. They meet during a telethon that is organized by Oxford in hopes to get some money from past alumni. And when they meet, sparks fly immediately. Arden, the English Lit student, immediately recognizes a perfect dominant in Caspian, but Caspian has some issues and believes that he has to control himself because of some of the things that happened in his past, and he doesn't trust himself to just let go. They dance around each other for most of the book. It's a great push and pull. This book is a classic Alexis Hall. He has an amazing sense of humor. It's especially interesting if you are familiar with what 50 Shades is about, had seen the movie or read the books. I highly recommend this book. I highly recommend it. It's definitely in my top 10 of all the romances I've ever read. Then I also read a non-fiction book that blew my mind, Come As You Are by Emilie Nagoski. I know that it's beloved. I highly recommend it to every single adult. If you want to understand how your body works, how your sexuality works, why you're attracted to certain things and disgusted by other things, she just explains it so well. I love people that can explain difficult concepts with simple words. I'm not going to stop for a long while on this book because it's a non-fiction book and I don't think a lot of people that are watching my channel are reading non-fiction regularly, but if you're interested in the topic, at least a little bit, I highly recommend this book. I think it's one of the best I've read on the topic so far. Finally, we're moving on to the second question. It's the best sequel of 2022 that I've read so far. I have two. Listen, I feel like you should be happy for me because I've had a good reading year so far, and it's a joyful experience, but I'm going to leave one of them to a different question because this video is going to be endless. The book that I'm going to talk about in this one is Good Girl, Bad Blood by Holly Jackson, which is the sequel to A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I was expecting the quality of the storyline to drop because it was not intended to be a series. But Holly Jackson is a fucking genius. I have not read many young adult thrillers / mysteries that were really, really good and that I was very invested in. This one is different. It's just different. I don't know what it is about this book, this series, that is so incredibly appealing, but I guess it's a few things. Pip, The protagonist is very charming. She's a very interesting character for a mystery series. She's very decent and very kind, and she cares about people. And I usually gravitate to characters in these types of novels that are bastards. I love a bastard. She is an opposite of everything that I enjoy in a mystery novel in terms of a hero or a heroine. So that's one. I also love the community in this little town. I love that in this book she decides to start a podcast. It's just as good as the first book, and if you have not read it yet, thinking that it's not gonna be good, pick it up. It's so brilliant. I also listened to the audiobook of this, and the audiobook is chef's kiss. The third question is new release you have not read yet but want to, and I have so many. I read a lot of random books this year, including a lot of backlist, which is good. It's always good to read some backlist, but also I'm not keeping my promises at all. I guess the top for me is Favorite Star by Rebecca Warrenhorse. I developed an internal block about fantasy fiction. It's really hard for me to force myself to start it, but when I start it and get invested in it, I love it. I just need a really good push. The next obviously is Counter Lucky Stars by 𝕊𝕌ℙ𝕆ℝ𝕋, and I also would like to get to Devon and Chris Plan a Wedding by Chance Higgins. I have not seen this book around on people's channels, and it makes me sad because the premise is so good. More reality TV show romances about queer people, please, I want them. I will read all of them at some point. I just think that while it is not a fresh idea for straight romances maybe, but we need it. And by we, I mean me. There's probably like 10 more books that I need to read, but I cannot add all of them to this video because you will tire of it. The fourth question is most anticipated release for the second half of the year. From the top of my head, I would love to get my hands on Young Blood, which is this Suffolk Vampire Academy inspired story, and it's everything that I wanted from Vampire Academy, so who's surprised? And A Strange and Stubborn Endurance would be great as well. I requested this book on Edelweiss and got nothing. I got denied, which is frankly homophobic, and I hate it. It's a literal crime. This book was made for me. Fifth question is biggest disappointment, and while I would like to say that it's Sally Rooney's Conversations with Friends, in fact, I didn't expect much from it, so I can't really trash it in this video as well. I would really love to. So I guess I have to say Ace of Spades because I actually expected to love this book. People were hyping it up so much, and in my opinion, it is a flop. It's tackling interesting themes, but it has no nuance at all. I was very disappointed. I think the story had so much potential, and in my opinion, it didn't deliver anything. The sixth question is biggest surprise, and I actually was very surprised recently. I picked up Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman, and I counted Neil Gaiman as a no-go order for me after I attempted to read Stardust, but Neverwhere was very readable, compulsively readable. It reminded me a little bit of Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov. It has very similar vibes. I gave Neverwhere 4 stars. It's a story that I would never read. I know that he's writing a sequel that is set in the same universe, but I think while the world building in this book is very interesting, it's simultaneously very unappealing. It's one of those worlds that sound so terrible you would never want to turn up there. Basically, it's about this guy that acts like a proper concerned citizen and helps a woman in need, and because of that gets wiped out from the memory of all the people that live in the London that he's used to. Instead, he's plunged into the world of the underground or underworld London. I already forgot. But basically the London of the homeless, of people that society rejected. And he's trying to come up with a way to get back. Well, the story has a very light, humorous tone, and even the two antagonists in this book are, in my opinion, hilarious. The situation that he ends up in is so scary. It's an interesting book. I was very surprised that I actually could enjoy something written by Neil Gaiman. The next question is favorite new author, debut or new for you? And of course it is 𝕊𝕌ℙ𝙁 Mandela, because after Summer Suns, I'm prepared to read every single thing that he puts out there. The close second is Fiona Zadie. I cannot say that she's my favorite because I read one of her books and gave it 4 stars. But I think it's an author that has a lot of potential. For me personally, I'm going to read more of her backlist. My newest fictional crush is Delilah from Delilah Green Doesn't Care, because she's hot. It's that simple. The newest favorite character, I think Arden from How to Bang a Billionaire. I just love a funny, energetic character. He reminds me a little bit of Styles from Teen Wolf, and Styles is obviously a thief. Number 10, book that made you cry. It is, without a question, Husband Material by Alexis Hall. This book was amazing. I gave it 5 stars. I loved it so much, especially because of Oliver. It is a sequel to The Boyfriend Material, and it follows Luke and Oliver. They're 2 years into their relationship, and the people around them start to settle, and they are trying to figure out what's the next step in their relationship should be, if they should marry or not, where their relationship is going in general, and what they want from their future, which is an incredibly important type of story for queer people, in my opinion. But also Oliver's storyline in this book is so relatable to me. In general, I related more to him in the first book as well. But this one is exploring every single fear that I have. At some point, Oliver had to give a speech. I'm not going to spoil why. And I literally started crying. I rarely cry when I read books. I usually am not very emotional about books. I'm more emotional about movies and TV shows, and I'm more of a visual person. But this was so heart-wrenching, I could not stop myself, and I had a really, really good cry after I finished. The book that made me happy was Delilah Green Doesn't Care by 𝕊𝕌ℙ𝙁 Blake. I was tempted to put it into my best of 2022 because I gave this 5 stars as well, and it is one of the best. But it's also the book that made me incredibly happy recently. It's just delightful. The perfect word to describe it. It has a perfect balance between humor and romance and serious stuff, which makes the romances significant to me and memorable, because when I read fluffy romances that don't have much conflict, I just don't remember them. I don't feel them. I loved Delilah. I loved the conflict that she had with her family. I loved how it was resolved. And the romance in this was incredibly appealing. The ladies had so much chemistry. It was so good. Their dialogue put a smile on my face, and I'm incredibly grateful to 𝕊𝕌ℎ𝙁 Blake for writing this novel. We're almost at the end. The next question is most beautiful book you've bought so far this year or received. As you know, I almost never buy physical books. I actually am in the process right now of selling some of the books from my shelves because there are a lot. And in terms of book purchases, I usually pay for some kind of subscription, and I also sometimes buy ebooks. I try to buy them when they are a bit cheaper than $5. I am going to look into my purchases, and here we go. The Atlas 6 by 𝕊𝕌ℎ𝙁 Blake. I think it's a very pretty cover, and I bought it fairly recently, I want to say, because everyone is talking about it and I want to check it out myself. I'm very bad with fantasy right now, we know that. So when it's going to happen is a mystery. The 13th question is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And honestly, I don't even want to make any plans, but I can tell you what's on my sort of tentative TBR. I would like to continue with Only James series, which is stupid and it makes me happy, and I'm reading it with my friends, which is going to make these books even more fun. We're currently reading Moonstruck, and Only James is in her element. I'm tentative on Book of Night by Holly Black because I've been hearing bad things about it. People say that it's a very raw draft, and I'm afraid that it's gonna be a similar issue as with the third book in her Fae series. That was worse than a bad fan fiction. I've been eyeing a lot of different books, some FF indie romances that you've never heard about. I'm not going to make this video into a list because that's going to be boring. Let's just agree that I'm going to try to read books that I'm interested in, and I'm not going to force myself to read books that are boring. This is it for today's video. Tell me about the best and worst books you've read so far in 2022 in the comments down below, or you can just reply to all the questions. I'm going to leave them in the description box. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you soon with another one, but until then,